Hey, so this is Miss Mandy's, and I'm going to do another read aloud for my students and anyone else who wants to listen in. This is a book that's not a new book, and it's not technically either a YA book, but I think it's a book that YA people would enjoy. It's called The Curious Incident of the Dog in Nighttime by Mark Haddon. It's a novel, and interestingly, Mark Haddon was um, a special education teacher, I believe in England, and he worked primarily with autistic students. And so he wrote this book with his experiences shaping this novel. So it's just a wonderful novel. So I'll just read the first part. Hope you enjoy it. It was 7 minutes after midnight. The dog was lying on the grass in the middle of the lawn in front of Mrs. Shear's house. Its eyes were closed. It looked as if it was running on its side, the way dogs run when they think they're chasing a cat in a dream. But the dog was not running or asleep. The dog was dead. There was a garden fork sticking out of the dog. The points of the fork must have gone all the way through the dog and into the ground because the fork had not fallen over. I decided that the dog was probably killed with the fork because I could not see any other wounds in the dog, and I do not think you would stick a garden fork into a dog after it had died for some other reason, like cancer, for example, or a road accident. But I could not be certain about this. I went through Mrs. Shear's gate, closing it behind me. I walked onto her lawn and knelt beside the dog. I put my hand on the muzzle of the dog. It was still warm. The dog was called Wellington. It belonged to Mrs. Shears, who is our friend. She lived on the opposite side of the road, 2 houses to the left. Wellington was a poodle, not one of the small poodles that have hairstyles, but a big poodle. It had curly black fur, but when you got close, you could see that the skin underneath the fur was a very pale yellow, like chicken. I stroked Wellington and wondered who had killed him and why. My name is Christopher John Francis Boone. I know all the countries of the world and their capital cities and every prime number up to 7,057. 8 years ago, when I first met Shaban, she showed me this picture. You can see it's a frowny face. And I knew that it meant sad, which is what I felt when I found the dead dog. Then she showed me this picture. And I knew that it meant happy, like when I'm reading about the Apollo space missions, or when I'm still awake at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning, and I can walk up and down the street and pretend that I'm the only person in the whole world. Then she drew me some other pictures. See all the different pictures. But I was unable to say what these meant. I got Shaban to draw lots of these faces and then write down next to them exactly what they meant. I kept the piece of paper in my pocket and took it out when I didn't understand what someone was saying. But it was very difficult to decide which of the diagrams was most like the face they were making because people's faces move very quickly. When I told Shaban that I was doing this, she got out a pencil and another piece of paper and said it probably made people feel very, let's see this, with the squiggly line. And then she laughed. So I tore the original piece of paper up and threw it away. And Shaban apologized. And now if I don't know what someone is saying, I ask them what they mean or I walk away. I pulled the fork out of the dog and lifted him into my arms and hugged him. He was leaking blood from the fork holes. I like dogs. You always know what a dog is thinking. It has 4 moods: happy, sad, cross, and concentrating. Also, dogs are faithful and they do not tell lies because they cannot talk. I had been hugging the dog for 4 minutes when I heard screaming. I looked up and saw Mrs. Shears running towards me from the patio. She was wearing pajamas and a housecoat. Her toenails were painted bright pink and she had no shoes on. She was shouting, "What in fuck's name have you done to my dog?" I do not like people shouting at me. It makes me scared that they're going to hit me or touch me, and I do not know what is going to happen. "Let go of the dog," she shouted. "Let go of the fucking dog, for Christ's sake." Sorry about the language. I put the dog down on the lawn and moved back 2 meters. She bent down. I thought she was going to pick the dog up herself, but she didn't. Perhaps she noticed how much blood there was and didn't want to get dirty. Instead, she started screaming again. I put my hands over my ears and closed my eyes and rolled forward till I was hunched up with my forehead pressed onto the grass. The grass was wet and cold. It was nice. This is a murder mystery novel. Shaban said that I should write something I would want to read myself. Mostly I read books about science and maths. I do not like proper novels. In proper novels, people say things like, I am veined with iron, with silver, and with streaks of common mud. I cannot contract into the firm fist which those clinch who do not depend on stimulus. What does this mean? I do not know, nor does Father, nor does Shaban or Mr. Jevons. I have asked them. Shaban has long blonde hair and wears glasses which are made of green plastic. And Mr. Jevons smells of soap and wears brown shoes that have approximately 60 tiny circular holes in each of them. But I do like murder mystery novels, so I am writing a murder mystery novel. In a murder mystery novel, someone has to work out who the murderer is and then catch them. It is a puzzle. If it is a good puzzle, you can sometimes work out the answer before the end of the book. Shaban said that the book should begin with something to grab people's attention. That is why I started with the dog. I also started with the dog because it happened to me, and I find it hard to imagine things which did not happen to me. Shaban read the first page and said that it was different. She put this word into inverted commas by making the wiggly quotation sign with her fist and second fingers. She said that it was usually people who were killed in murder mystery novels. I said that 2 dogs were killed in The Hound of the Baskervilles, the hound itself and James Mortimer's spaniel. But Shaban said that they weren't the victims of the murder Sir Charles Baskerville was. She said that this was because readers cared more about people than dogs. So if a person was killed in a book, readers would want to carry on reading. I found this book when Mother took me into the library in town in 1996. I said that I wanted to write about something real, and I knew people who had died, but I did not know any people who'd been killed except for Mr. Paulson, Edward's father, from school, and that was a gliding accident, not murder, and I didn't really know him. I also said that I cared about dogs because they were faithful and honest, and some dogs were cleverer and more interesting than some people. Steve, for example, who comes to the school on Thursdays, needs help to eat his food and could not even fetch a stick. Shaban asked me not to say this to Stephen's mother. Then the police arrived. I like the police. They have uniforms and numbers, and you know what they are meant to be doing. There was a policewoman and a policeman. The policewoman had a little hole in her tights on her left ankle and a red scratch in the middle of the hole. The policeman had a big orange leaf stuck to the bottom of his shoe, which was poking out from one side. The policewoman put her arms around Mrs. Shears and led her back toward the house. I lifted my head off the grass. The policeman squatted down beside me and said, "Would you like to tell me what's going on here, young man?" I sat up and said, "The dog is dead." "I'd got that far," he said. I said, "I think someone killed the dog." "How old are you?" he asked. I replied, "I am 15 years and 3 months and 2 days." "And what precisely were you doing in the garden?" he asked. "I was holding the dog," I replied. "And why were you holding the dog?" he asked. This was a difficult question. It was something I wanted to do. I like dogs. It made me sad to see that the dog was dead. I like policemen too, and I wanted to answer the question properly, but the policeman did not give me enough time to work out the correct answer. "Why were you holding the dog?" he asked again. "I like dogs," I said. "Did you kill the dog?" he asked. I said, "I did not kill the dog." "Is this your fork?" he asked. I said, "No." "You seem very upset about this," he said. He was asking too many questions, and he was asking them too quickly, They were stacking up in my head like loaves in the factory where Uncle Terry works. The factory is a bakery, and he operates the slicing machines. And sometimes the slicer is not working fast enough, but the bread keeps coming, and there is a blockage. I sometimes think of my mind as a machine, but not always as a bread slicing machine. It makes it easier to explain to other people what is going on inside it. The policeman said, "I'm going to ask you once again." I rolled back onto the lawn and pressed my forehead to the ground again and made the noise father calls groaning. I make this noise when there is too much information coming into my head from the outside world. It is like when you are upset and you hold the radio against your ear and you tune it halfway between two stations so that all you get is white noise, and then you turn the volume right up so that this is all you can hear, and then you know you are safe because you cannot hear anything else. The policeman took hold of my arm and lifted me onto my feet. I didn't like him touching me like this, and this is when I hit him. This will not be a funny book. I cannot tell jokes because I do not understand them. Here is a joke as an example. It is one of Father's. His face was drawn, but the curtains were real. I know why this is meant to be funny, I asked. It is because drawn has three meanings, and they are 1, drawn with a pencil, 2, exhausted, and 3, pulled across a window, and meaning 1 refers to both the face and the curtains, meaning 2 refers only to the face, and meaning 3 refers only to the curtains. If I try to say the joke to myself, making the word mean the three different things at the same time, it is like hearing three different pieces of music at the same time, which is uncomfortable, confusing, and not nice like a white house or like white noise. It is like three people trying to talk to you at the same time about different things. And that is why there are no jokes in this book. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. So this is just an amazing book. Again, it's called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. And it's a murder mystery, if you will. The young man, if you haven't figured out, the protagonist is autistic, or he's on the autism spectrum, and he's trying to make sense of this mystery. The dog has died; it's been killed. Nobody knows why, and he's determined to figure it out. So I highly recommend this book. It's not really full of profanity, even though there were a couple F-bombs I had to drop. So I hope you enjoyed it and have a great day.